What would you do if you found an abandoned baby in the woods? Now imagine this, a golden retriever alone in the cold, standing guard over that baby for hours. What would drive a dog to risk his life for a human he's never met? This is the incredible true story of courage, instinct, and love that will leave you breathless. In a small town nestled between dense forests and rolling hills, a story unfolded that would change the lives of everyone involved. It was a chilly autumn morning when a golden retriever named Max wandered away from his home, chasing the scent of something unusual. Little did he know, he was about to stumble upon a life-changing discovery: newborn baby abandoned in the woods. This story isn't just about survival. It's about the unbreakable bond between humans and animals, and how one dog's instincts defied all odds. Why was the baby there? Who left her? And how did Max become her protector? Let's dive into this emotional journey. The crisp morning air carried the scent of damp earth and fallen leaves as Max trotted through the forest. The golden retriever, a bundle of boundless energy and curiosity, had left his home at dawn, his nose twitching at the rich tapestry of woodland scents. His owner, Sarah, usually took him for walks, but today, Max had slipped out of the backyard when the gate was left slightly ajar. As he ventured deeper into the woods, the towering trees cast long shadows, their branches whispering secrets in the autumn breeze. The usual symphony of chirping birds and rustling leaves felt muted. Something was different today. A peculiar scent lingered in the air, one that Max couldn't quite place. His ears perked up, his body tensed. Then a sound cut through the silence. A faint, almost fragile cry. Max's head snapped toward the source. His heart, if a dog's heart could understand urgency, seemed to pound faster. He took off, his paws crunching against the frost-kissed ground. The cries grew clearer, more desperate. Pushing past a thicket of bushes, he skidded to a halt. There, nestled against the base of an old oak tree, was a tiny bundle. A newborn baby wrapped in a thin, tattered blanket. Her skin was pale, her lips trembling as she whimpered weakly against the cold. Max tilted his head, sniffing the air around her. The scent of milk, of something fragile and pure, clung to the baby. She was alone, vulnerable, cold. Instinct took over. Max lay down beside her, pressing his warm, golden fur against her tiny body. He nuzzled her cheek, his wet nose brushing against her soft skin. A quiet whimper escaped the baby's lips, but she didn't recoil. Instead, she nestled closer to him, her tiny fingers twitching as if recognizing the warmth of a protector. Max licked her gently, an unspoken promise of protection. He had never seen a creature so helpless before, but something deep within told him he had to stay. He had to keep her safe. The wind howled through the trees, and the morning sun barely cut through the chilling air. Time passed. Max didn't move. He didn't whine. He didn't bark. He simply stayed, wrapping his body around the fragile child as if shielding her from the world. But how long could he keep her safe? And who, if anyone, was coming to find her? Max curled his body tightly around the baby, shielding her from the biting cold. His golden fur was thick, but even he could feel the frost creeping in. The baby let out a faint whimper, her tiny body trembling. Max licked her face again, nudging her gently, hoping to keep her awake. He let out a low whine, sensing the urgency of the moment. If she fell silent, it could mean the worst. He barked, once then twice, loud and sharp, hoping someone would hear. But the vast woods swallowed the sound, and the silence that followed was deafening. His heart pounded, his instincts screaming at him to act. He nudged the baby once more, standing over her protectively, his ears pricked for the faintest sound of movement. Minutes passed, then an hour. The sun was rising, but the warmth barely reached through the dense trees. Max's paws were beginning to feel numb, but he refused to move. His mind raced, but he didn't know what else to do. His only thought was simple yet unwavering. I must protect her. Then a sound. a crunching of leaves, footsteps. Max's head shot up, his body tense. Someone was coming. A figure emerged from the trees, a man walking with a leash in hand. His own dog, a Labrador, trotted beside him. Max's instincts took over. He barked frantically, his body low, tail stiff, eyes locked onto the man. Ethan, a local hiker, stopped in his tracks. His dog whined softly, sensing something was off. Ethan squinted at the golden retriever ahead, confused by the urgency in its movements. "What's wrong with that dog?" he muttered under his breath. Max barked again, stepping aside just enough for Ethan to catch a glimpse of what lay beneath him. His breath hitched. A baby, a newborn, wrapped in nothing but a thin, tattered blanket, her skin pale, her tiny lips quivering. Ethan's stomach dropped. How could this be real? His hands trembled as he fumbled for his phone, his fingers almost numb from the cold. He dialed with shaky hands, his voice breaking as soon as the line connected. "There's a baby in the woods," he stammered. "And a dog, he's been guarding her." The dispatcher's voice was calm, but urgent. "Stay with the baby. Help is on the way." Ethan knelt beside the infant, removing his thick jacket and carefully wrapping her in it. She was freezing. He could barely feel warmth on her tiny hands. He glanced at Max, who stood watching, his amber eyes filled with an intensity Ethan couldn't describe. The baby let out a weak cry, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan's heart pounded. "She's so cold," he muttered. "Please hurry." Max stepped closer, pressing his body against Ethan's arm. It was as if he understood, as if he was asking, pleading for the man to save her. The minutes stretched into eternity. The wind howled through the trees, the cold biting at their skin. Max let out a soft whimper, shifting anxiously as if urging the baby to hold on just a little longer. And then sirens, distant but approaching fast. Ethan let out a shaky breath of relief. But the fight wasn't over yet. The baby's breaths were shallow, her small chest barely rising. Would help arrive in time? The distant wail of sirens grew louder, slicing through the icy morning air. Red and blue lights flickered through the trees, casting shadows on the frost-covered ground. Max's ears perked up, his body tense as the approaching vehicles rumbled closer. He didn't move from the baby's side, even as the paramedics leaped from the ambulance, urgency in their every step. "Over here!" Ethan called, his voice strained. The paramedics rushed forward, their faces tightening as they saw the tiny, fragile infant cradled in Ethan's jacket. One of them, a woman with kind eyes, knelt beside the baby, pressing gentle fingers to her cheek. Her brows furrowed. "She's ice cold," she murmured. "We need warm blankets now." Another paramedic opened a thermal blanket, carefully wrapping it around the baby's shivering form. Max edged closer, his nose brushing against the soft fabric. His tail twitched, wagging just slightly. As if sensing these people were here to help, the woman checked the baby's pulse. "It's weak," she said, urgency in her voice. "She's hypothermic. We have to move fast." Ethan swallowed hard. "She's going to be okay, right?" "We'll do everything we can," the paramedic assured him, but the worry in her eyes was unmistakable. As they lifted the baby into their arms, Max whined and stepped forward, his golden fur bristling with anxiety. He had spent hours guarding her, protecting her from the cold, and now strangers were taking her away. His gaze never left her tiny, fragile face. One of the paramedics glanced at Max, then at Ethan. "Is this your dog?" Ethan shook his head. "No, I think he found her." The paramedics exchanged glances, realization dawning. One of them crouched down, looking into Max's deep brown eyes. "You stayed with her, didn't you, boy?" Max let out a small whimper, his tail lowering. He didn't want to let her go. Ethan placed a reassuring hand on Max's head, his voice soft. "You did good, boy," he whispered. "You saved her life." Max blinked up at him, but his eyes kept flickering back to the baby. As the paramedics gently carried her to the waiting ambulance, Max took a few hesitant steps forward, his paws crunching against the frozen ground. His heart pounded. Was she leaving? Was she safe? The back doors of the ambulance swung open. The baby was placed inside, a paramedic monitoring her tiny breaths as the engine rumbled to life. The vehicle's lights flashed, illuminating the trees around them. Max let out a soft, almost mournful whine. She was going. He didn't understand why, but he knew one thing: his job wasn't done. As the ambulance sped away, disappearing down the winding road, Ethan exhaled, rubbing his hands together against the cold. He looked down at Max, who sat motionless, staring after the retreating vehicle. "We'll find out who she is," Ethan murmured, "and why she was out here alone." Max didn't move. His gaze stayed fixed on the road, his heart heavy. The rescue was over, but the mystery was just beginning. At the hospital, the tiny baby, now named Lily, lay in an incubator, her fragile body wrapped in warmth. Machines beeped softly, monitoring her slow but steady progress. The doctors worked tirelessly, fighting to stabilize her. Every breath she took was a victory. Meanwhile, outside those hospital walls, the town buzzed with shock and disbelief. The police had launched a full investigation. Who had abandoned a newborn in the freezing woods? And why? The story of Max's heroism spread like wildfire. Local news stations aired footage of the golden retriever who had refused to leave Lily's side. His loyalty, his unwavering protection. It captured hearts far beyond their small town. Soon, national networks picked up the story. Social media exploded. Miracle dog saves baby. Golden retriever becomes a hero. A dog's love, Max's incredible rescue. Journalists flooded the town, eager to meet the canine savior. Cameras flashed, microphones extended. Max, oblivious to his newfound fame, wagged his tail as strangers praised him. His owner, Sarah, could barely process it all. She stood on her front porch, overwhelmed by the attention. Her voice trembled as she spoke to the reporters. "He's always been gentle," she said, wiping at her teary eyes. "But this is beyond anything I could have imagined." He knew. Somehow, he just knew she needed him. As the days passed, the police worked tirelessly to piece together the mystery. They combed through missing persons reports, interviewed residents, and searched for anyone who might have seen something. Then, finally a breakthrough. A woman had been spotted near the woods the night before Lily was found. Security footage from a nearby gas station showed a young woman, disheveled and pale, wandering aimlessly, her arms empty but her eyes full of pain. Her name was Emily Carter, 22 years old, a single mother. No history of crime, no family nearby, just a girl who had recently given birth and then disappeared. When the police found her, Emily didn't resist. She sat motionless in a small, dimly lit apartment, staring at the floor. Her hands trembled as they placed the cuffs around her wrists. I didn't know what to do," she whispered. Her voice cracked. I thought someone would find her." The truth was devastating. Emily had been suffering from severe postpartum depression, an invisible battle she had fought alone. Overwhelmed, desperate, and terrified, she had made a heartbreaking decision, one she would regret for the rest of her life. The town was divided. Some called her a monster. Others saw a mother in pain. But one thing was certain: Emily's story was a wake-up call. As news of her arrest spread, so did a deeper conversation about mental health, about the struggles of new mothers, and about the help so many never receive. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Lily's tiny fingers curled around a nurse's hand. She was fighting, she was surviving, and she wasn't alone. Against all odds, Lily recovered. The doctors marveled at her strength, calling her survival nothing short of a miracle. But those who knew the story understood she hadn't fought alone. She had been protected, kept warm, and given a chance, all because of a golden retriever named Max. With time, Lily was placed in the care of a loving foster family, a couple who had long dreamed of a child to cherish. They welcomed her with open arms, promising to give her a life filled with warmth, safety, and love. As for Max, he became more than just a town hero. He became a symbol of loyalty and hope. The mayor honored him in a special ceremony, presenting him with a Medal of Bravery. Schools invited Sarah to share his story with children, teaching them about kindness, compassion, and the incredible bond between humans and animals. Yet, for Max, none of the praise mattered. His greatest reward was knowing that Lily was safe. Sarah often took him to visit her, and every time, Lily's face lit up with joy. As she grew, she would giggle and reach for Max, her tiny fingers curling in his golden fur. And Max? He would wag his tail, pressing his nose gently against her cheek, just as he had done on that cold morning in the woods. And Emily, her story didn't end in tragedy. With the right support, she began to heal. Therapy, counseling, and a network of understanding people helped her find strength again. Her experience sparked a movement, encouraging conversations about postpartum depression and the importance of mental health care for new mothers. This story of courage, love, and second chances became more than just a tale of survival. It became a reminder that even in our darkest moments, there is hope. And sometimes that hope comes in the form of a golden retriever named Max.